Actually, the width was so great that the compressed rock beneath the subterranean chamber sprung upward, giving birth to the mid-oceanic ridge that wraps around the Earth like the seam of a baseball. The continental plates, the hydroplates, still with lubricating water beneath them, slid downhill away from the rising mid-Atlantic ridge. After the massive, slowly accelerating continental plates reached speeds of about 45 miles per hour, they ran into resistances, compressed and buckled. The portions of the hydroplate that buckled downward formed ocean trenches. Those that buckled upward formed mountains. This is why the major mountain chains are parallel to the oceanic ridges from which they slid. The hydroplates, in sliding away from the oceanic ridges, opened up very deep ocean basins into which the floodwaters retreated. On the continents, each bowl-shaped depression or basin was naturally left brimful of water, producing many post-flood lakes.
This illustration of a massive worldwide catastrophe in antiquity does support the biblical story of the deluge in every detail. But if major government agencies have developed these theories, what else might they know? Is there evidence of any government's involvement in the search for Noah's Ark? Satellites have mapped the globe with cameras of unbelievable clarity and resolution. Can Mount Ararat have escaped these lenses? And what of the rest of the Noah's Ark story? A book long removed from the biblical canon tells us the body of Adam was taken aboard the ark. Has it been found? Surprisingly, the world's governments have, by and large, taken a somewhat benign view of the search for Noah's Ark. In spite of dozens of expeditions over the past 200 years, there have been few official efforts to find what many believe to be the cradle of mankind. In 1916, however, an event occurred that resulted in a full-fledged government expedition to Mount Ararat. Shortly after World War I, a Russian pilot, Lieutenant Robolsky, told his remarkable story of sighting the Ark.
I was stationed with a small group of aviators about 25 miles northeast of Mount Ararat. A new high-altitude engine had been installed in one of the planes, and I was sent up for test flight. When I circled the mountain, I spotted a dark structure there, huge, something the size of a battleship. It was a strange-looking craft, but quite clearly a boat with a rounded-over top.
News of Lieutenant Robolsky's sighting reached Tsar Nicholas himself. In 1917, the Tsar dispatched 2 companies of soldiers to locate and document this extraordinary find. The soldiers found and measured the Ark. They also made a photographic record of the great ship. But unfortunately, all of this was taking place just as the Communist Revolution was breaking out at home. As a result, reports and photos of this expedition have yet to be found. They are presumed lost or hidden in some secret Kremlin vault. They were, however, seen.
There's been controversy about whether or not there ever was a Russian expedition or an Ark sighting around the time of 1916 or 1917. Our author spent 20 years researching Anastasia, the last surviving member of the Russian royal family. During one of his personal conversations with her, he was shocked when she started to talk about an expedition which her father, the Tsar, had commissioned to go to Mount Ararat and measure and photograph Noah's Ark. She told him she'd actually seen the photographs and the report from the expedition. She also told him she'd worn a cross made from the wood of Noah's Ark.
If in fact those records and photographs still exist, their discovery would perhaps answer many of the questions still remaining about the Ark. But can they be found? American pilots stationed near Mount Ararat during World War II apparently sighted the Ark as well, but the U.S. government's response was quite different.
In 1948, I saw a 35mm film of Noah's Ark taken by military aircraft fly over of Mount Ararat. On the film, I saw a long cigar-shaped vessel which was dark in contrast to the surrounding ice lake.
The official response of both military and civilian leaders in the U.S. has been to simply ignore these reports, as well as more recent reports of satellite imagery. Repeated requests through the Freedom of Information Act have so far proven fruitless. Why? Could it be that they already know what's there?
And there at the Strategic Air Command are secret documents right now which have pictures of Noah's Ark. They're even labeled Noah's Ark on the picture.
In the mid-1990s, I worked on a top-secret government contract. During that time, I spoke with a man who used government assets and imaging equipment to search for Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat in 1974. The mission was probably instigated by the CIA director who had recently spoken with an Ark researcher.
We know our government has photos and satellite imagery of that area of Noah's Ark. However, they probably won't want to release that because when they do, they'll also disclose just how good our spy technology has become.
That might be one reason to withhold the photographs and images, but could there be another reason? Could it be that there's more than just the Ark itself to be concerned about? A former employee of the Smithsonian thinks there is. However, we should point out that both the Smithsonian and the National Geographic deny the story that follows.
Well, I was working at the Smithsonian Institute in the vertebrate paleontology section, and I saw my immediate supervisor with a visiting scientist, and they were both bent over a viewer looking at some photographs. Just told me, well, take a look. And what I saw was an oblong object resembling a ship, which wasn't under the ice, but semi-covered with it. It was broken in the middle, or it appeared to me to be broken, and one end was definitely smashed. He told me that this had been taken on a mountain named Ararat in Turkey. There were some boxes and crates on the loading dock, and he mentioned to me, okay, that these were from Ararat, and these were going into his section, which was physical anthropology. One of these was a oblong sarcophagus-like thing that I was told later was made out of alabaster.
The idea that Noah would put Adam's body aboard the ark seems quite odd. But in the Apocrypha book of Eden, now Apocrypha books are those books that did not get in the Bible because they were not considered divinely inspired, it says that Noah was instructed by Adam's son Jared to take Adam's body aboard the ark. In another verse, it clearly implies that Noah is to leave Adam's body on the ark, and a third verse clearly states that gold, myrrh, and incense is to be left with Adam's body as an offering to God. There is definitely strong evidence that Adam's body was taken aboard Noah's Ark, and equally strong evidence from eyewitnesses in Turkey that the Smithsonian Institution and National Geographic Society conducted an expedition in the 1960s which photographed that body and or recovered it for further analysis in Washington, D.C.
Again, we want to make it clear that both the Smithsonian and the National Geographic deny ever conducting such an expedition or funding expeditions for others. One thing is certain, the alabaster coffin is nowhere to be seen at the Smithsonian. But there is an interesting sidelight to this story. Could it be that the Smithsonian and the government have more information about Noah's Ark than they are willing to share? Recent requests for satellite imagery of Mount Ararat, or aerial imagery of Mount Ararat, or records of the Mount Ararat Anomaly Project have all been denied. Requests for non-photographic documentation is under review. In the meantime, there are living eyewitnesses who are willing to share their experiences.
He said he had a great-uncle that knew where the Ark was, and his great-uncle was going to take us up to it. So I was kind of exciting, you know. Boy, I'm on an adventure. Mustafa's great-uncle. He just took us right up the side of this mountain, and we were going around rocks and above cliffs and below cliffs. It was like a trail. You know, he was like a guide. He knew exactly where he was going. And I'm tired and I'm winded, and it's, oh boy, when is this ever going to end? When are we going to see the Ark? If we don't see it pretty soon, I want to go back. His uncle turns around and laughs at me, and he points down. And then all of a sudden you look down, and here's this huge, awesome ship sitting below you in this fog, you know. It's almost like a, you know, you picture a dream, and there it is.
Ed Davis befriended a young man while stationed in Turkey during World War II. In return, the young man agreed to show him Noah's Ark.
At that particular time, you couldn't see the Ark. When you got where you could see it, he would come back and get me. I thought, well, that... But a couple of months later, he come back. He said, we can see it, let's go. We were all tied together, about 20 feet apart with a big rope. I was never as cold, as wet, as hungry, as sleepy in my life as I was when I got up there. They was trying to show me the Ark. When I was standing, it looked like a big piece of blue rock. And then we moved back, and then we could see in the end of it. It was awesome. You knew somebody was watching you. There was something going on. I don't know how to explain that feeling, but you knew someone or something. Well, it was just a mighty power someplace present.
Dr. Ahmet Ali Arslan is a Washington correspondent for a major Turkish newspaper, but he knows Mount Ararat like few men do.
I grew up there, and I climbed more than 50 times to the summit of Mount Ararat. In 1989, and I climbed the northern part of Mount Ararat and upper side of Ahura Gorge. I went to check a certain area which had been shown in a satellite photo as a possible location of Noah's Ark. I noticed 100 or 200 feet away there was building type of structure, definitely made of wood. It almost looked like a captain's cabin. It shouldn't be there. My belief is that what I saw and what I took in my photographs definitely, without question, is Noah's Ark.
Those who believe that the Bible is a book of historical truth will more easily accept the possibility of the Ark being on Mount Ararat. Those who believe that the Bible is a book of fiction perhaps will remain skeptical even in the face of the most conclusive proof. But there is another group, those who have said they have been there and seen the great ship.
It was awesome.
What I saw is Noah's Ark.
Of course, our mystery would be solved if the Defense Department and NASA would simply release the satellite imagery and surveillance photographs that have been taken over the past 50 years, but that doesn't seem likely. In the meantime, the search goes on. Many highly respected Ark explorers are expected to mount expeditions if and when the Turkish government reopens the mountain to research and climbing. And if you have a flair for adventure, a group calling themselves the Noah's Ark Alliance has posted a $1 million reward for the discovery of Noah's Ark and confirmation of its present existence. A number of explorers, scientists, and just plain ordinary men claim to have already encountered the great ship that saved mankind. But there are still many aspects of the story that remain unexplained, like if there is an alabaster coffin in the Smithsonian, who is in it?